We've all got scars, some on the outside and some on the inside. But we can't be defined by our scars. I've spoken with some extraordinary people about how they've become empowered by their scars. This is I've Got Scars, baby.
All right, so I'm so excited. This next show is going to be really, really awesome. It's going to be something. When I heard this story, y'all, I was like, wow. Today, we are going to talk about exploring the depths of compassion. And I have Miss Tasha Odunuyi. She is an author and she is an entrepreneur. And so, we are going to talk about some real life stuff. And first of all, I just want to say this, Miss Tasha, okay? You didn't come on this show looking fancy, okay? She stepped out. Look at these earrings, y'all. Look at the earrings. Look at, she blinged.
It's an interview, and I'm going to treat it as such.
I appreciate it. I went and threw on I put on a necklace.
You know what?
I put on a necklace. So I'll just try, I'm trying to see, I'm trying to be fancy like Miss Tasha, but not, let me move that right there. Okay, it might, we'll see. But it's all good. You're fancy. We're going to have to talk about that because I need to be fancy too. So anywho, let's get back to the topic at hand. Your story, wow. That is all I can say.
Yeah.
On the real. It's very powerful. It is, yeah, I just have to let you go ahead and tell it. It has to do with your family. And let's just hear what that story is, and then we'll speak further.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate this opportunity. This is like the first series of me really starting to talk about this. 20 years ago, 3 of my brothers got into a fight, and one of my brothers passed away from an injury from the fight. And one of my brothers was faced with serving 20 years. And when I got that call that Friday that I needed to hurry up and get to the hospital because my brother had been brought there, I was speechless. Like it stopped me in my tracks because I'm like, family, siblings get into fights.
Yeah.
Was this any different? And the enemy just came in and wreaked havoc, and we found ourselves in such a tragic situation. And at the time, that flight or fight kicks in, and I'm like, you know what? I can't leave my brother alone in this. I have to support him. I have to be there for him because unfortunately, he didn't have any other support. And when I say I fought for him and I didn't want to lose another brother, I wound up losing another brother because the third brother developed mental illness and was killed by SWAT.
Oh my God. Okay. So let's take it back.
Yeah.
Let's take it back to what was going on. Like you said, so brothers, siblings, they get into it, they wrestle around the ground sometimes, and it's like, okay, stop playing around, get it together, and it's not a big deal. But this was different.
And that's just the thing. None of us can say why it was different, but I think stemming from our childhood, and my mom was a single mom. She was in like a 3-room apartment. And I just think it was just like a lot of frustration and boys being boys. And I couldn't even tell you, I couldn't even tell you today, like, this is one thing. It was just, I think in the heat of the moment, and it got out of control.
How old were they at the time?
My brother who passed away initially had just turned 19. Another brother was 24 and the other brother was 27.
Okay. So they were fighting. Did they talk about what they were fighting about? Was it something that was really a big deal, or?
That's the thing. It was something just so, like, I can't even put my finger on it. Like, it was nothing that would warrant a fight getting out of control, but my brother passed away.
Okay. So one brother, just so that people have a full understanding. So there are 3 brothers. They all get in the fight. One brother maybe your brother, the youngest, was hit or fell a certain way based on a particular one brother's actions, and he passed away from the injury. And so then the brother that hit him went to prison.
Right. He was faced with serving 20 years, and I fought like hell for him with a public defender, and he wound up not serving 20 years, but by nothing short of the grace of God, serving he got a 7-year sentence, and he served half of that time.
Wow. Okay. So then what was that like for you? Were you the only one fighting for him to?
Yeah, actually I was. And I'll just say, when God puts something on your heart to do, and I know the person I am, I'm always the encourager, the fighter for people. And I was the oldest, I'm the oldest sister. I'm the oldest. And so it's like that mother
Gotcha.
figure. And so I just felt like I needed to step in and be there for him. And it didn't matter who wasn't, and it wasn't for me to judge who wasn't at the same place that I was in at that time, because we were all going through this. This was all shock. This was all trauma for everybody. I just knew that even if nobody else stepped in, I had to step in. It didn't mean that I looked at my mother or my other siblings any kind of way because they didn't process or didn't join me in this fight. Everybody has to get to that place in their own time. And as a mother of 3 kids myself, I couldn't even imagine what my mom was going through, experiencing this whole thing, and then my other siblings. So I'm just glad that God gave me the heart that he did, and I was able to step in and to fight for my brother.
So when the incident happened, the family, I mean, how did they initially react? I mean, obviously that's a tragedy, but how did you felt like they took sides? You felt like, how did they really react?
I don't even think it was a matter of taking sides. I think it was just so traumatic and such a shock for everybody. You couldn't even really put into words what you felt, how you felt, or what you should do next. Just, I guess everybody just grieving and going through it in their own personal way.
Yeah. And so you felt like, because, okay, so let's make sure that we're clear about this. The brother that initiated the blow, it was just a fight. It wasn't like he was intending to do any type of harm or anything like that. It was just boys being boys, siblings being siblings type of thing. And they probably at the end of the day would have just kind of gone and like, hey, let's go to the corner store and get some chips and we'll be fine, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that was the whole thing for me, because I mean, I know my brothers, he wouldn't have wanted anything like that to happen. And you have to even dig deeper. To have to live with that for the rest of your life, every birthday, every Christmas, every holiday. I mean, yeah, we all went through it and processed it, but you have to live with this for the rest of your life in a different way than we see it and process it. Like, you serve time for this. Think about it in prison. There's nothing for you to do. You had 4 long years to think about going through this. And I'm just like, you know what? He needs somebody. Everybody needs somebody. When we even personally think about the situations that we've gone through in life, the worst of the worst situations that we can actually pinpoint. Imagine if you had nobody to talk to about that, or nobody to tell you, you know what, you maybe can't see it right now, but you're going to come out of this. Everybody needs somebody.
This was not something that your brother meant to do. And everybody had to grieve in their own way. Do you feel like he got the kind of support that he needed from the family, or do you feel like you kind of were the one to kind of step up to really reach out to him?
I definitely was the one to step up. I mean, this thing happened Friday. By Saturday, I was telling my husband to drive me down to the jail, so that I can see him. I mean, just putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, I just couldn't even imagine, even though I was grieving and going through the same trauma, and it was shocking, when I went down there and just to see him, with his head hung down, hopeless. It's like you just can't walk away from something like that. And nobody who meant to do anything like that would have that type of reaction. And it just left me speechless. I didn't even know what to say as I stood there with tears coming down my eyes. And I think that kind of made him feel like maybe I was forced to come. But my husband explained to him that no, that I wanted to be there. And even if it was just for him to see me and just for me to utter to him, you know what, I love you and I'm going to support you, that was enough.
Got you. Got you. And what about the other brother who was involved? Was he supportive as well, or what? How did he react?
No, he wasn't supportive. And for the fact that they were all there and witnessed it, that was a whole nother thing that he went through. And I think that's too some of why he slowly developed the mental illness. And we started to see, little changes in him. He started to act different. Even my kids, my youngest used to always play video games with him. And he would, some of the kids would be like, oh, he's kind of acting strange. And that to me was the red flag that he really needed to get help mentally. Even though I would try to suggest therapy, he never wanted to, go to therapy because I know, probably know the stigma within our community. Nobody wants to go see a therapist, especially I think it's even harder with males.
Yes. Unfortunately, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I have to ask, okay, so I know a lot of people are hearing this. They're like, wait a minute. So I get that Nicole, boys will be boys. People get in fights, people get angry, stuff happens, but there's a limit, I imagine that some of your family might have looked at you like, are you excusing this kind of behavior, accident or no? They shouldn't even have been arguing like that. Or, everybody has their perspective. Why didn't you disassociate yourself from your brother who went to prison?
For one, because he's my brother, and again, because I felt that he needed support, and I knew that he probably wouldn't have the outside support that he needed, and I just wanted to be able to help him get through it. And to be totally transparent, we were raised by a single mom, 7 kids. We were physically and mentally, all of us, abused by my mom's husband, who happened to be a preacher in the church. And so as the older sister, more like the mother figure to them, I've watched the things that they've had to go through. Nobody, people see you and they don't know what you've had to experience, or they see you and you look like you're okay, but they have no idea what you're dealing with. Nobody was there when these boys would ditch school because gangs were trying to get to them, or the different things that we would have to go through at home with this stepfather, and then go to school and put on this front, from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock, that everything was okay, and wishing 3 o'clock wasn't there because we didn't go home. And so I just felt like, what, the life that we've lived, I just didn't want to see him go out like that. And I didn't want to, for God forbid, what if I had not supported him? I could have very well have lost another brother.
Wow. The reason I wanted to talk about this and to have you share your story is because of just the concept of having compassion. Because a lot of times I think, especially in this day and age, in this society, there's so much that people have to say about everything that everybody else does. And it's kind of like until you walk a mile in someone else's shoes, you really can't say anything, or even you can do whatever you want to do. But is it really wise to say to judge someone else's experience? Because you don't know. And so I think the idea of compassion is really, really important, especially now, because there are so many people that are struggling, that are going through things. And sometimes all they need is someone to say, hey, I'm there for you, even if they don't necessarily agree with what happened. You know what I'm saying? And obviously, you know, whatever the circumstances were with the argument or the disagreement that your brothers had, nobody could have ever imagined this kind of outcome. But it's one of those things where it's like, but I know he has to feel horrible. And this is tough for all of us. So it has to definitely also be tough for him. So why do you feel like compassion just in general is something that is important? And I know you say as the big sister, the mama figure, do you feel like that's a person has to be in that kind of role to express compassion? Or do you feel like how does somebody find that within themselves in a situation like this? You see what I'm saying? How do you find that?
Personally, I feel like we're all imperfect people. We've all gone through something. We've all gone through something that if we could go back and change, we probably would have. And we all needed that one somebody to help us get through, regardless of who it was. It could have been a teacher. It could have been anybody. You know, I even think about today with the stuff that we see going on with kids shooting and gang violence and all of this stuff. If you dig deeper, they all have a story. There's something deeper there. You know, it's like one thing causes something else. So your story may not be my story, and you may be sitting thinking, "Oh, I could never do that," you know, to my brother. I actually had someone just last week. There was a guy putting up curtains because we had just moved, doing a hardware. He asked me about the book, and I was telling him about it. And he said, "You know, I have brothers and we fight, but I would never do that." You never know what you would do unless you're in that situation in the heat of the moment. Your story may not be my story, but think about your story. Think about that experience that you've had and how you could have gone back and made it different. You know, you just don't know.
Yeah, and I think you're right about that, because it could have been a situation like I saw a movie and a guy was being aggressive toward the other guy. And all he did was like push him off of him. And he fell and hit his head in a certain way and passed away. So I hear what you're saying. And I like this idea of putting yourself in the situation and saying, just what if you were in the situation? Instead of saying, consciously, I would never do that. I think that's what people think when they say I would never do that. They think consciously I would never do that. And I imagine that so many people consciously would not do whatever it is that they're doing, but they've done it.
Right.
And it might have been an accident. It might have been something that really was unintentional. They didn't mean for it to go and escalate this far. But it has happened. So I think that's really important for people to understand. Let's not say what you won't do, because you don't know. And even if you wouldn't do it on purpose, accidents could happen. And how would you feel if it was just an accident? If you pushed somebody off of you and they fell down some stairs or something and harmed themselves, you know, even if they didn't, you know, pass away, but even if they harmed themselves permanently somehow, and now you have to see your loved one hopping around. And here's the thing, it's interesting you say that, because that's one of the reasons I have my scar and this platform is here, is because I was under my father's care. And I pulled a cup of coffee onto myself. I'm sure he had already raised 6 children, and they were unscathed. You know, they didn't get burned. But with me, I did, and he felt guilty my whole life. Yeah. And so I'm just using that as an example.
Sure.
You know, I know this is a completely different set of circumstances, but I'm just using that as an example for people to fully understand. So how do you think this compassion that you've extended to your brother has benefited you personally?
Man, to be perfectly honest with you, I can't even imagine not. It's just who I am. I'm just built that way. And I mean, to even think that I could just go through that experience and that trauma and know every day I'm living my life and he's there serving time with not a letter, nobody to write him a letter, send him a card, take a phone call, put money on his books, suffering, that what if he hadn't survived that time, that then here I am again. Now, not only did I lose 1, 2 brothers, God forbid a third brother. It was a release for me because I know that I needed to do it. And I know the compassion that I have is not just with him, it's with everything. You know, so it's just not like this is something that I just did once in my life. You know, it's just who I am. And of course, you have to guard against being taken advantage of or being put in situations that you shouldn't. But this was one that I just felt that God really just gave me some supernatural power and strength and to help me get through this, because there was times in this that I didn't even think that I can make it. And I've looked at this from so many different viewpoints. My brother slowly developed, the other brother slowly developed mental illness behind this. God forbid I wasn't as strong as I was in my faith. When we say it couldn't have been us, that mental illness could have been me. I could have channeled what I had gone through. It could have been too much for me, because even if you think about the fact that I was showing up every week in court, fighting for my brother, facing a state's attorney who was fighting for my other brother to get justice, and I was right there in the middle. You know, so I mean, we can look at this so many different ways. It's so layered, but at the end of it, I was sadly put in this situation. Of course, I would want my brothers to be back here. I can't change what happened, but I could change how I reacted to the situation and move forward. You know, I could change wanting to save a life. And even though he went through this, that doesn't mean that he does not deserve a bright future and to move past this and to have someone say, you know what, you made a mistake. I mean, we read the Bible. How many things that they do in the Bible? You know, God is forgiving and he's a compassionate God. And who makes us any different?
Yeah. So how do you channel? You talked about how you dealt with this. How did you deal with it personally?
Man, when I could catch my breath and come to and find some time for Tasha, I had to get therapy too. I had to sit and talk to someone. It wasn't easy. And I had to do a lot of unlearning too, because growing up in the church, my grandmother raised me. It was like what goes on in this house stays in this house. And people did not go to seek a therapist. They went to the church. You had a problem, you went to talk to a pastor, a mother, an elder in the church. But Jesus and therapy does go together. I can have both. You know, God has blessed us with people here who have the practical tools to help us get through these things. And so I'm definitely a big advocate now for mental health and seeking a therapist.
Good. I just want to make sure that people understand that to be the compassionate one, to be the one that extends yourself to someone else, you still have to take care of yourself. There's still a sense of self-care. It can't just be like, oh, I'm going to save everybody else. And you just think you're going to be just fine. So I just want people to understand that. That's why I had to ask.
Right.
Because, you know, people love to put the cape on sometimes if they do, you know, if they are that kind of compassionate person, they put the cape on and they go save everybody else. But
because that was me. And I've been
dependent on
that.
Yes.
That was me, you know. My phone ring in the middle of the night. I'm up trying to go see about this person.
So yes, I absolutely think that mental health and taking care of yourself is really, really important during any type of stressful situation. You know, especially if you are the big sister, the big brother, the one everybody in the world comes to you to fix everything. If you are usually the fixer, please go get you some assistance. Okay. You don't have to be fixing everything by yourself. Okay. You really don't. So, what would you say to someone who has been faced with a difficult situation and maybe they've been wronged or somebody says something to them, or just generally speaking, compassion needs to be involved? What would you say to somebody if it's like, look, I don't give two flying fig Newtons about I am angry? How do you get that person to consider compassion?
Whew, that's so loaded. And I'm just going to be honest, it is not easy. It is not easy at all, because there have been other things that have happened in my life. And I'm just like, I love Jesus, but I might have to go to the altar on Sunday after. But you learn how to adjust. Mm-hmm. I would say really dig deep and think about it, because it's only hurting us. It's a process to get there. And just know that you can talk to a therapist to seek help and go through the process. And one of the things that I've learned in going through so much too is be careful of allowing people to rush your healing and your process. Go through the process. It's okay to go through the process, and people don't have a right. No, you don't have to stay in it, but you have a right to go through whatever it is and get that process out. If you're mad, angry, crying, hurt, whatever it is, because all those feelings are valid. And just know that your feelings are valid, and that once you get to that place and you've done the work, that now it's time to start thinking about that other side, and you'll feel so much better for it, for sure. Because trust me, we just gonna keep it real. Sometimes you want to be like, you know what? Not this time, but okay. We're gonna repent, but we're gonna do nothing.
No, I hear you. You know what I like to say to people? I think what you said is very valid. I like to say to people, integrity is really, I think, the best way to gauge things. Mm-hmm. Integrity with yourself and integrity with dealing with someone else as well. And what I mean by that is, like how you said, I extended compassion because that's really who I am. So there was a part of you that was being in integrity with yourself. Mm-hmm. And then you also said, okay, this is just who I am. This is what I really believe in. And then you also extended the extended the compassion towards your brother because he needed it. And I think sometimes when we gotta go maybe a little too far off, mm-hmm. is when we only extend compassion toward people because they need it. And we don't consider ourselves and who we are. Mm-hmm. And I like that you said, sometimes you're not there yet. Sometimes mm-hmm. you need to take a minute mm-hmm. and just heal within. There are some situations where I felt wronged mm-hmm. and I was doing my thing and like, you know what? I feel wronged. I don't really want to talk to you. Mm-hmm. And then it took a while until I was able to talk to the person. Mm-hmm. And I don't think anything is wrong with that, but it has to be in a space of, you have to understand where you are and who you are in that moment. And it's, it's not like, but it also don't go the other side right. and say, no, I'm just about to be angry and I'm going to be holding a grudge, holding it in, because that's energy that's breaking you down. Mm-hmm. Just don't go to the energy that's breaking you down is all I'm trying to say for people. Like, it doesn't have to be, oh, you did this and that's fine. It's fine. I understand people go through things. You don't have to be that all the time. Mm-hmm. But then don't go to the other side and say, I don't care. You can come in here and say, oh, the 100 million, I'm sorry. And I'm looking at you like, I don't care nothing about it. But that's not your truth. So I think we always have to go back to what our truth is. So I like what you said.
And even just thinking about it, when this happened, my youngest was like 6 months old. He's 20 now. So just think about the time that it has taken for me to get to a place where I remember so many times I was prophesied about writing a book and I'd be looking at them like, you don't know what you're talking about. During this pandemic, a year before the pandemic, I was prophesied about it again and speaking. And then we all had time to wind and sit down. I began to get up every morning, 30 minutes to start to write. And before I know it, I had the book. And I'm just like, feeling like, okay, at one point, man, it took so long to get here, but it took so long to get here because I'm in a different place. If I hadn't been in a different place and I hadn't healed enough to be able to tell you the story, and I'm on here breaking down, crying to you and can't get through it, I'm not at that place where I can actually share it with other people, where it can be now empowering. It's not just about me talking about the trauma, it's about talking about the triumph, how I got through it.
Yes.
So
I love that. I love that. You didn't get to this space until you were really ready, until you were really healed. And from what you said, I just like to repeat things because I want people to know. I want them to really grasp it. You went through therapy. Yes, you are a compassionate person. You thought about how your brother felt. You thought about those types of things. You thought about how it affected your other brother. You see how not really doing the internal work could possibly harm you. And then you let some time pass as you continue to heal throughout the years, and then you're able to go and speak to someone else. I wanted to break that down. You said your son, your child was 6 months old, and then now your child's 20. Like, I want people to understand that it may take time. I'm not saying it's going to necessarily take 20 years, or my experience that it's going to take 25. I'm not saying that. But what we're saying is that when you're really healed, you speak about it differently. You see the value in it. You see the beauty in your experience. So go through the healing process. It's okay. I was like, go through it. Don't try to rush the process, you know. So awesome. So you have a book. You have a book, and it is telling the whole story. I am so grateful that you took this time. So what is one thing that you would say to someone that just kind of sums it all up as it pertains to compassion, as it pertains to family, love, yourself, healing, and wholeness?
Wow, you know, you can really layer that. You really coming from me, right?
Girl, you gotta go ahead and let them have it.
For sure. For one, I realized that everybody has a story. We have all been through something, coming out of something, and we're all gonna experience things. And we can't control what happens, but we can control how we deal with it and what we go through. And just know that whatever it is, own your story. You know, every single thing that we've gone through can help to bring somebody else back. It took me 20 years to get here to be able to write a book. It took me 20 years to be able to now sit before you, and actually, I didn't even sit before you, agree that I'm going to do a Zoom, because I was like, I wasn't for all the speaking. But now I realize that even though that trauma and that tragedy happened to my brothers, I can't bring them back, but I can now take something so traumatic that happened to me and try and turn it around and use it for whatever good I can. And that good is, I don't care if it's one person who reads my book and finds healing, who is delivered, who's had that family member who they haven't been able to forgive, has a situation where they haven't showed a level of compassion, or has been the one to stand in a fight alone when nobody else was there with you. There are so many ways that we can look at this, but I think we have to individualize it. How can I take what I've gone through and use it to empower and to reach back? Because you can't have a testimony without a test, and we are all being tested. at some points in our lives. And so, every story doesn't start off beautiful. That wasn't a beautiful story that my family went through, but I can guarantee you, and I've sat and I've looked like, okay, God, what is it that you want me to get from this? What can I do? I can't bring them back. How can I do something that will at least make me feel like, everything that I went through, it wasn't in vain. The late nights, the times when I couldn't pray, and the only thing that I could say was Jesus, the running back and forth, supporting my brother. I can now help save somebody else's life through the grace of God, using me, using my voice, speaking to me through what has happened. And so I would just say, fight for your healing, fight for your family, and just, man, in today's society, have some level of compassion. Think about your worst moment. If you were in that thing by yourself and everybody had turned their back on you, you want to even get even more deep. Think about if God said, you know what, you've done this 10 times, you've prayed for forgiveness 10 times. I'm just going to go ahead and leave you in your mess. You are right down here, so we just have to personalize every experience, and don't say what you wouldn't do, because you don't know. We could go out here today and God forbid, you have no control. It's grace that takes us through every situation. And so, yeah, for sure. I would definitely say get the book, because even if, even with me sharing my story, there are parts in the book at the back that even talks about how your body deals with trauma, the parts of the body that trauma affects. There are parts in there where I actually speak and talk to, I don't care if it's just that one person, where I'm pleading with them to fight for their healing. There's a prayer in that book to fight for your healing. And man, I'm just grateful that God has blessed me to get to this point to be able to share. And I can sit here through something so traumatic with joy and a smile on my face, because I know that He's moving me into a place where He's going to take this pain and use it and turn it into purpose. And that's what I feel that this is. So I'm grateful for this experience. And I'm grateful and I'm thankful for all the lives that I've prayed for that will be impacted by this book, because there's no way I could have gone through this for nothing. Somebody somewhere is going to be saved, and God is always going to get the glory from everything that I do.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm so excited for you. So how can people get in touch with you? How can people find your book and purchase your book?
Okay. All right. So it will be available on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Walmart, Books A Million. So on May 24th, you can go to Amazon and purchase Mustering the Strength to Fight there, because the more I get people to purchase, of course, naturally, when I first come out on Amazon, it will help me to get that bestseller. And no, that's not the end all be all, the lives that I'm going to impact, but it will just help me to be able to spread the book a little bit more. You can also go to my website at born2empowerher.com. And then I also invite you to follow me and my journey with this, because this is just the beginning, on my Instagram at born2empowerher.
Thank you so much, Tasha. I appreciate you for sharing such a powerful story. And I love how you said at the beginning is not always beautiful, but there is beauty in the story. Your story can be beautiful. And I think your story is very beautiful, and it's beautiful because of the work that you put into it, the work you've done on yourself, the work that you've done to write the book, the work that it's amazing, it's powerful. And I am so excited about this and so happy for your success and all the people that your book will touch and your story will touch. So thank you for being a part of the show. I appreciate you.
For sure. Thank you.
Absolutely.